Welcome back. On Tuesday of this past week, Asa Hutchinson was elected as the 46th governor of Arkansas. He defeated Mike Ross and two other candidates by a 13-point margin. He will take office in January. He joins us now on the program. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you, Roby. I'm thrilled and glad to be here.
All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about, in depth, about the campaign itself. I mean, this thing went on for close to a year. Campaign commercials, more money spent than we've probably ever seen in a governor's race. What were some of the key turning points to you? Where did you really kind of see momentum pick up? I would imagine the primary victory was one of them.
Yes, and the campaign actually has been going about 18 months. I mean, it's just been a very, very long campaign. And one of the boosts that I had was the primary, and I was able to spend a significant amount of money during the primary on positive ads, really geared toward the general election as well. And so that gave us the boost coming out of the primary that gave us the lead, and we never let it go.
Yeah. Did you, when did you kind of know you were going to win? I mean, I know you weren't confident until the polls closed, and it only took about a minute after the polls closed to learn that. You had to be shocked by that.
Well, I was. It was there was two surprises that night. One was how quickly they called the election. The other one was the call that I had from the President of the United States. But yeah, that was a surprise to me. And in terms of when did I know, I mean, I felt very comfortable with there were three polls the week before that had a 10-point margin. Mm-hmm. Felt like they were accurate, and so that gave me a comfort level. It was going to be hard for things to change. So we had a high level of confidence, but let me, you know, you don't feel really cocky about it all until those votes actually come in.
Now, you mentioned that you talked to the President of the United States. He helped you get elected. I think that would have to be something. Were you all talking about how much he helped you, or what did you guys talk about?
Well, there's a little bit of irony there, and you know, one, it was a very, very gracious call. It was nice, a very sincere congratulations call. I did sense there was a little bit of down tenor in his voice. I mean, these aren't easy calls that he's making, and so, but he extended recognizing how much the governors do and wanted to work with me, and I shared that sentiment back with him. It was a very gracious call, and it was a joy to get that call that night.
You see some common ground where you guys can work together on some pivotal issues?
Well, we didn't get any specifics there at all, but the key is the starting point that the governors play a major role. I think he's certainly experienced that when it comes to policy matters such as health care. You know, the governors have pushed back dramatically on it, didn't always win. He's prevailed on that, but I think he recognizes that he needs not only the Congress to be in partnership with, but the governors as well. And so we'll see. I mean, I believe in trying to work out things.
You might want to keep that phone number handy for him because you've got some EPA regulations I think you're going to want to talk to him about.
Absolutely. That is an area we're pushing back, and hopefully he listens.
Let's talk about some other things that maybe your takeaway from Tuesday's elections. I can't find an adjective big enough to describe the totality of the Republican victory over the Democrats. It was at every level, statewide offices, federal offices, legislative races. What's your interpretation of what those results mean?
Well, you know, Arkansas has changed, and I go back far enough in Arkansas politics to understand what it was like to be in the extreme minority. And to now see the Republican Party controlling the constitutional offices, the legislative branch, the executive branch is extraordinary. And one of the consequences is, you know, that the Election Commission really shifts. I mean, the majority control shifts to the Republican Party, and that's because the majority of the constitutional officers are in Republican hands. I think another significant is the third, fourth party candidates, Libertarian, Green Party candidates did not get significant level to be automatically qualified for the battle, and I'm not necessarily rejoicing in that, but it really shows the strength of the two major parties, and obviously the Republican Party being dominant.
Is it too much victory? I mean, can you have too many seats in the legislature? Can you control too much of the executive and legislative branches?
Well, you know, it's our turn, and so I think it's right. But you've got to keep it in perspective. The expectation level is going to be very high. That, all right, you've got the wheels of government now, what are you going to do with it? And if there's a challenge or a problem, you're accountable. There's not anybody else you can point your finger at. And the challenge is obviously that we're going to have to work together, not just across the aisle with Democrats, but within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
sure,
describe that chasm for me. I mean, how do you define that chasm?
well, I've been in Congress, and the legislative branch is the same way here, that you've got people elected on different promises, whether it's the private option or other issues, and they're coming with their priorities that they believe are important in their campaign and their constituents. And so just because I'm governor and I've got my priorities doesn't mean it's their priorities. And they're new legislators. So we've got to understand each other. We've got to persuade each other. It's a competition of ideas. And I think there's going to be some common ground with a conservative direction, with the tax cuts, our budget being balanced, and a conservative approach to government. But we're going to have some disagreements. We'll have to work through them.
That's what you're getting paid the big bucks for now. Let's talk about what goes on in the transition now. You've named a transition team. You mentioned at a press conference on Thursday that you were going to talk to the agency heads over the next 30 days or so. You've pushed any kind of debate on the private option to sometime in late January, which buys some time to really think through that whole process. Give me just kind of a sense of your philosophy of how you're approaching this transition.
I'm approaching it from the standpoint of learning a lot. I think I've got a good grasp on many of the issues, but the details of the budget and the agencies I want to work on. That will be my priority. But you've also got the issue of the prison. I want to probe more deeply as to what the solution is there, and getting ready for the legislative battles. In terms of the agency heads, I recognize there's a cliff coming in January, which is the inauguration, and then you got the legislative session immediately, and so you can't accomplish everything in the first 60 days. And so you've got to set your priorities. And so I want to, I've talked to some of the agency heads, and some of them there'll be transition, some will be, we'll have a change. Some of them have already left or submitted their resignation. So I think there'll be a very smooth transition in that, and they're professionals. I look forward to working with them through that transition, and we'll make the best judgments.
You're not going to make a wholesale change, though. You're going to pick and choose a little bit in terms of who you keep, who voluntarily decides to leave, and then who you might want to replace.
Sure. There'll be significant change. This is a change in leadership, and there will be changes. That's what elections are about. But I also recognize that there's some positions that I want to have a continuity. They're doing a good job. And so, there's going to be a balance there. And I want to make the best judgments, have the best people in there that will help me accomplish the agenda we've been elected on.
You don't want to tip me off as to what maybe one of those may be today?
No, we're not going to.
All right, okay. Last question for you. Biggest budget concern that you see right now? You've had enough time to digest what's going on. You know prisons are a factor. You know tax cuts are a priority for you. You know you've got the private option as a consideration in there. What's your biggest budget concern as you look at the budget now?
I would say it's sustained economic growth. It makes a big difference in the state budget as whether you're growing at a 2% rate or a 2.5% rate. And we've had a better quarter, but we need to continue to have economic growth in the state, which is the driving message that I have. And so what the economy is like next year will really impact the budget numbers. And sure, the prison, the overcrowding issue, reimbursement to our counties for their jail population, that the state's responsibility, all of these things can be solved if you have a growing, increasing budget. The tax cuts that I've looked at, I think will be manageable within the budget. We'll have to make some adjustments, but I'm fully convinced we're going to be able to accomplish those. All
right. Governor-elect Asa Hutchinson, looking forward to taking the elect off and just calling you Governor Hutchinson. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Appreciate you. We're back with more right after this.